as far as I understand, New York Times writer Peter Applebaum reported about a year ago that Governor Patterson had actually signed legislation to expedite fracking, and I think permitting is taking place and could take place in the future. And while there are a lot of bills to prevent it, the governor doesn't have to sign them.
Yeah, I think there was a bill that was passed 2008, which I voted against, by the way, which basically reduced the amount of space between the wells. It was a technical bill. It in itself doesn't approve this project, but I think it was indicative of an attitude where we were going to try to facilitate what the industry wanted, and that's why I was against it. I voted against it. But this is probably not, legislation doesn't have to be passed for them to do this. We may have to pass legislation to stop them from doing it. Because at this point, if they get the permits from DEC, then they will be able to proceed under the current, state of legislation. So that's why we've introduced, Jim Brennan introduced this bill that I'm a co-sponsor of. There's other bills that have been introduced, because we may have to try to block it with legislation.
There's a group of Pennsylvanians called the Damascus Citizens for Sustainability.
Do it slower.
I'm sorry.
Damascus.
The Damascus, which is a township in Wayne County, Citizens for Sustainability, and they have been doing a marvelous job of creating a citizens network. And one of their leaders has started a new group that I hope the Sierra Club will fold into it, called the New York City H2O Project. And not only do they have some of these discs, they have a filmmaker who's making a documentary movie. He's been out in the West several times. He's been to Dim Rock, and he's looked at these things. And that would be very important stuff you're going to get your hands on. There's a number I want to give you in terms of when the industry says this stuff is environmentally safe. As part of its all things to all people, the industry's estimated we could have as many as 120,000 gas wells in New York and Pennsylvania. Now, if you just assume that 2% of these go south in some way, that's 2,400 screwed up gas wells. If you get up to 5%, which at that level expansion is highly probable, then you've got 6,000 screwed up gas wells. Maybe not all of them are going to set drinking water aflame, but they're going to pollute streams, do all sorts. So when people tell you that this stuff is safe, just keep the numbers like that in the back of your head. A sustainable program would look for a level of safety similar to what we have in airlines. Because if we just lost 2% of airlines, I can assure you nobody would travel by air. The industry can afford to do that, or it could with a couple of years of focused research during which that moratorium would take effect. It can afford to do that. Speaking of affording, let me just mention one other thing, picking up the Assemblyman's comment. The idea that DEC could even begin to reinforce this kind of complicated, underground, difficult area is completely ridiculous. When we did the Watershed Protection Program, we hired for DEP 400 new people to cover an area 10% of the size of New York alone on a problem that was easier to monitor. I mean, you were talking about a huge increase in enforcement people who do this, right? How do you pay for that? Answer. You put fees on the, you don't try to take it out of the New York State budget. Note this for your bill. You take fees from the industry sufficient to pay for, because it should be regarded as a cost of their doing business. So.
Go ahead.
There is something that New York City can do, and that is just figure out where is this gas going. Now you have to live upstate a little bit, because you guys are being beaten up. I live upstate. And the whole rationale is New York City has a deficit of energy. They lack electricity, and we need this gas to build power plants to bring electricity into New York City. The Damascus citizens also were overrun with the New York Regional Interconnect, this 190-mile power line that would have gone from outside of Utica down to next to Stewart State Forest outside of Newburgh in Orange County. And the rationale was we need electricity to supply the New York City metropolitan area. New York City is silent on this. Con Ed says we do not need electricity in New York City. The merchants in New York State say we need to upgrade the distribution system, the power lines, the substations. We don't need new supplies of electricity. The Millennium Pipeline serves the whole Marcellus Shale area. Proposals to build power plants, 1,000 megawatt plants. One just popped up in Dover in Dutchess County. The Iroquois line is there, but one just popped up in Orange County, which will be approved by the smallest unit of government in terms of the permitting process. The state, the Public Service Commission, the DEC have nothing to do with permitting these power plants that the rationale is to supply New York City. New York City is silent on the need of electricity. We have to discuss that. We also have to discuss one thing that the state government can do is just itemize all of the subsidies, the public subsidies that exist anyway with the Empire State Development Corporation, the subsidies from the local county IDAs and town IDAs, the various incentives from the federal government anyway, the 2 incentive packages that are out there with accelerated depreciation and bonus depreciation on top of that. These projects, the well drilling goes to the same amount of public money as these power plants, as does the power lines. These facilities can be built and can be profitable to the developer even if no gas flows or no electricity flows.
Yeah. I think your point is extremely well taken, because it's kind of chapters 2, 3, and 4, and the chapter 1 I described about how we're subsidizing green energy on the one hand, and we're undercutting it on the other, by artificially low-priced natural gas. You're right, Con Ed is not interested in this stuff because basically, except for some peaking power, the City of New York doesn't need it. And the Bloomberg administration is very strongly committed to getting major new conservation savings out of our building stock. What goes on here, and it goes all the way back to 1992 when Dinkins helped kill the Hydro-Quebec James Bay project, one of my more pleasant moments in that job, is the state energy network wants the City of New York to subsidize these kinds of facilities for the benefit of the state and the electric industry, so that essentially by passing on the costs to New York City, they don't pay the true cost of this kind of development upstate, so you get another artificially low-priced power generation that again is competing with green energy. So I think you've made a really important point that we should get our hands around all of these costs, all of these subsidies, and as I said about the environmental impact statement, if it doesn't give a true accounting of these, you'll know you're in trouble.
Good.